very good evening to you. You are watching Biz1st in Focus. Well, if you had taken a drive down Colombo and in the surrounding suburbs, you would have noticed the skyline is changing. There are new apartment blocks coming in, and you would have noticed so many new things happening, development, progress in Colombo. Well, at this juncture, it's important that we keep pace with what's happening around you, especially when it comes to the real estate property. With me today is Pravir Samarsingh, the president of the Sri Lanka Condominium Developers Association. Where we'll be in conversation today, we'll be extensively touching on the real estate and property market. Thank you very much for joining.
My pleasure.
Well, first up, we are seeing a shift in patterns when it comes to purchasing and renting property. What do you think of it?
Yes, definitely. Over the last 10 to 15 years, and more particularly in the last 5 years, you have seen more and more apartments being developed in the city of Colombo, and the purchasing of apartments becoming more and more popular, as opposed to standalone land investments or standalone detached housing being purchased. So that trend, obviously, you have seen happening.
Well, does that really match with our development and how Sri Lanka and Colombo is progressing as a commercial hub? When you look at the sewage system, the disposal system, are we really keeping up with the apartment blocks that are growing?
Yes, I should imagine the apartment blocks are coming up because of the demand and supply situation as well. As you know, increasingly land values in Colombo has been increasing over the last, especially after the war ended in 2009. You found land values more than doubling or even tripling in Colombo city areas. So consequently, purchasing detached housing or land in the central areas of Colombo or highly residential areas has become extremely expensive. So as a result, that has encouraged, or that has been the main fueling point for vertical living taking place and more condominiums being developed. So as a result, you will find that shift. More and more residential living in Colombo, in the central business district, and even in the secondary business district will be more vertical, and the peripheral areas will be basically catering to detached housing. So that shift will take place, and going forward, I should imagine there will be much more vertical living taking place in Colombo.
So are we really ready to take in more apartments, especially in Colombo when you see the area, and also when it comes to the disposal system and the sewage system? Are we really making progress in that sector in order to cater to such a large scale of apartments coming in?
Well, it's important in two aspects, I'll take it. It's definitely important to create housing in Colombo, because with the shift of population, the demographics, as well as more and more people coming into the city of Colombo for purposes of working on a daily basis, you will find it's important for us to have more and more housing in Colombo. So with that, for the requirement for housing to take place in Colombo and the immediate, obviously the peripheral areas as well, the infrastructure has to take place and support it. So at the moment, you don't find too much of issues, but going forward with more and more of these residential developments taking place in high-rise residential developments, whether it's the electricity supply, water supply, sewage facilities, have to keep pace and develop on a simultaneous basis. And no doubt the transport system also has to support that, you know.
Well, urbanization, and when you talk about urbanization, the Ministry of Megapolis is coming up with a new plan to make Colombo the commercial hub and to separate the city into administrative and commercial hubs. So in this scenario, in this context, how has the Condominium Developers Association come up with a new plan in order to match this situation?
Yes, we have also been working closely with the relevant government authorities and making our own proposals, falling in line and actually embracing the plans that are being proposed by the Megapolis development for the development of the western region. So basically our areas have been on proper legislation being introduced, or condominium management laws being updated, even stimulating the demand side as well as supporting the supply side with affordable housing options. So those are the areas that we have been basically promoting and making policy recommendations on.
Well, with that being said, what sort of amendments do you think the government should make to the unit trust code when it comes to, especially when it comes to the real estate market?
In that as well, we have made a number of proposals, and we are happy even in the 2017 budget, the Finance Minister mentioned that he will work closely with the Securities and Exchange Commission to introduce REITs. So REITs has been one area that we have been proposing. That's basically to enable financing to be introduced into the property development sector. In most developed countries, you find REITs being adopted to allow even individuals, like stock market, allowing individuals to purchase shares and investing in listed securities. REITs is one instrument allowing individuals as well to participate in the development of real estate. So it's important for certain changes to take place in it. It's mainly in minimizing transaction costs in the transfer of land from a owner to a unit trust, or we call it a REIT in the real estate sector. So that has been embraced this time. I hope the implementation takes place as well.
Well, the 2017 budget, you said that government has made certain allocations for the real estate sector and also has really made amendments to its policies. What is the highlight of the budget when it comes to the real estate sector, and how has it really helped and facilitated the process?
I think there was a few important areas covered in the budget where it comes to the real estate sector. One area was that allowed listed, or they mentioned proposed listed entities where there was foreign ownership more than 50%. So basically listed entities that were controlled by foreign entities or a combination of foreign entities to be able to purchase freehold land. Now, as you know, the Land Alienation Act prohibited foreigners or even listed companies where there was foreign ownership in purchasing real estate in Sri Lanka, or property, or even land. So that relaxation is welcome. So that will enable even listed companies to acquire land. It can be for anything. It can be for building a factory, or building a hotel, or even getting into the real estate business, so whether it's apartments, offices, or shopping malls, etc. So that's one way, a way of attracting new capital into the real estate sector. So that was one important area. On the area of encouraging demand and stimulating demand, there was also certain proposals made to open out the purchase of residential apartments to foreigners. Earlier, as you may know, foreigners could only purchase condominium properties above the 4th floor. That requirement was relaxed in the budget, where foreigners were also allowed to purchase condominium properties even from the 1st floor upwards.
What difference does it make?
So earlier, basically, if someone developed a high-rise building, foreigners could only purchase the 4th floor upwards. Now it allows a foreigner to purchase from the ground floor. So that will help the local developers to even market their properties to foreigners on the lower floors. So that helps encouraging or allowing more purchasers of the lower apartment floors if there is a limitation in locals buying it, you know. So that just opens it out to the foreigners as well. There is no magic in why it should be the 4th floor or 7th floor or the 1st floor. I should imagine the rationale behind that law was to discourage foreigners by buying detached housing or a house which is on land. But now, apartment, a high-rise apartment, foreigners will be able to purchase not only above the 4th floor, but from the ground floor as well. So that gives a bit of relaxation for the developers to market their lower floor apartments to foreigners as well. And earlier there was a slight discounting of the price because of the restriction in the purchasing of the ground floors to the locals only. There was a discounting in price. Now perhaps there can be a readjustment of the lower end prices of the lower end apartments as well. Then another area which in this particular budget where there was encouragement for foreigners to purchase was earlier foreigners were required to remit the total purchase consideration from overseas to purchase property in condominiums. Now this time it was proposed to allow foreigners to purchase or at least finance up to 40% of the cost of an apartment by borrowing from the local banking system. So that encourages foreigners also to use the local banking system to finance their acquisition of property. And it also encourages our local financial services sector or even the banks to find a different segment to lend funds to. So of course the risks of that lending and the security of that the banks will have to look after, obviously. So it just stimulates this different sector of foreigners, and when I say foreigners, it also incorporates the Sri Lankan diaspora over the years who have gone overseas and got foreign nationalities and who are living overseas, of also being able to enjoy those benefits which were not hitherto available.
Well, that being said, do you think that this really calls for more stringent regulation, at least a degree of regulation when it comes to easing out restrictions when it comes to foreign buyers?
Controls, what happens is the main control that should be there is encouraging foreigners to bring in money to Sri Lanka and buying assets here. I would always encourage it. So as long as it comes from legitimate sources, which normally the banking system has systems to monitor from where the money comes and how it should be channeled. They're supposed to bring it through a particular route in the banking system and then invest in property. So as long as it comes through those channels, legitimate money, I should imagine we should encourage it and not control it to an extent of discouraging investments from coming into the country, you know. And after that it's very transparent. It comes in, it goes into a developer, the money comes in, because property is one area we must know. While developing property, a number of industries benefit out of it. Whether it's all the different industries in the supply chain, whether it's cement suppliers, building materials suppliers, transport suppliers, sand suppliers, all of them. There's a lot of industries and a lot of employment. This is which is there under when a development takes place. So it's very useful to encourage different segments from overseas to come in and acquire real estate in Sri Lanka.
Well, with that, let's head into a short commercial break. But when we come back, we'll have more on Biz1st in Focus. So stay tuned. Welcome back. You are watching Biz1st in Focus, and I'm in conversation with the President of the Condominium Developers Association, Mr. Praveer Samarasinghe. Well, before the break, we spoke about office spaces and commercial hub, Colombo itself being hailed as a commercial hub. But you see a mismatch between how manufacturing plants and office spaces are being set up here and the labor cost. So most companies prefer setting it up elsewhere, like in South America, in China, and Taiwan, than setting it up here in Sri Lanka. Well, this is a challenge for the Condominium Association and the developers themselves. How do you all tackle this issue?
Of course, if it is manufacturing activities setting up outside, as well as for the condominiums and real estate sector, it may be more the office type of space as well. I believe industries setting up facilities outside will be for different reasons, right? It may be, like you mentioned, labor costs. It may be cost of production, whether they go into areas where cost of production is lower. So that can be a number of factors that will affect cost of production other than labor costs. It can be energy costs, it can be availability of raw materials, etc. That may drive people to set up factories and offices outside. Of course, as you know, access to markets may encourage people to set up offices or manufacturing facilities outside Sri Lanka, being the proximity to market or preferential access to certain markets. That also can drive facilities out of Sri Lanka. But if you look at in the area of real estate, from our point of view, what we can look at is cost of space. The cost of space also can be a factor for people to decide on where to set up offices. In that area, if you look at where large spaces are required for office spaces, I would think certain types of industries, whether it's IT-enabled services or knowledge outsourcing services or business process outsourcing services, you will find they're very sensitive to cost of real estate or the cost of office space. Because for those type of industries, in addition to the cost of people, the second most costly aspect is cost of office space. So that is an important area where you might find people switching from Colombo or looking at Colombo as a destination as opposed to India or Philippines as a destination, purely driven by also cost of office space. So in that area you find in Sri Lanka large facilities has not developed to enable that type of industries from setting up space here or being finding to be able to find space here at a cost say a low cost base here. Two areas where the cost of the space as well as the scalability of the space, because as you know, some of those types of industries, they will like to start with 25 people, be able to increase it to 50 people, or be able to scale it up to 200 people, with the progression of the business, to be able to scale up the number of people in a particular location. So that type of flexibility is not there in a large scale in Sri Lanka at the moment.
Well, Sri Lanka has been hailed as a tourism hotspot, and the government is now taking measures to promote it as a education tourism hotspot, where we see students coming in for education purposes, but their goals are quite short term. They don't plan on living here, but they finish their studies and go back to their homeland or elsewhere. How has this really benefited the developers?
I think if you're looking at the residential accommodation for areas like educational tourism, or even for that aspect medical tourism as well, because we find in Sri Lanka there is some degree of demand on that area from countries nearby Sri Lanka. Of course, we must look at the students who come for those areas, or the patients who come for medical tourism, the type of accommodation that they'll require. Of course, for medical tourism, it may be a shortest time frame. For educational tourism or for educational purposes, they'll look at a longer time frame as well. So there is, as opposed to purchasing of real estate, to say obviously they'll want to rent space, and for that segment it will be affordable type of rentable residential accommodation. So you find there are certain places in Sri Lanka or certain types of developments in Sri Lanka. It can be from houses, it's not necessarily apartment type of living, but with houses as well as certain mid-level apartment complexes cater to that type of market in Sri Lanka.
Well, with that, let's head into another commercial break, but when we come back, we'll have more on Biz1st in Focus.
दहलीज पे मेरे दिल की जो रखे है तूने कदम
ජීවිතයේ සොඳුරුම සිහිනය හැඩගන්නට මංගලනකත බදාදා උදෑසන 10ට
මගේ නම නවෝදයා නිශාදිනී. මම ආයේ ගලේවල ඉඳලා මට මේ තෑග්ග ලබා ගන්න පුළුවන් වුණේ TV1 නාලිකාවේ නිකාශය වෙන පුංචි මනාලි ටෙලිනාට්‍ය බලලා මම මේකට SMS කරා මගේ කිරියාමගේ ෆෝන් එකෙන් ඊට පස්සේ පහවදා මට කෝල් එකක් අරන් කිව්වා මම ජයග්‍රහණය කරලා තියෙනවා කියලා. එතකොට මට කියා ගන්න බැරි සතුටක් දැනුනේ. මගේ අම්මා දැන් ඉන්නේ විදේශගත වෙලා. එයත් මේක ඇහුවට පස්සේ ගොඩක් සතුටු වුණා. දැන් මගේ පාසලේ හැමෝම යාළුවෝ වගේ මේ ටෙලිනාට්‍ය බලනවා. ඉතින් මම ඔයාලටත් කියන්නේ TV1 ටෙලි 5 නරඹලා මේ වගේ ත්‍යාග දිනා ගන්න කියලා.
Thank you very much for joining us. You are watching Biz1st in Focus, and I'm in conversation with Mr. Praveer Samarasinghe, the president of the Condominium Developers Association. Well, just before the break, I spoke to the viewers about sustainable development and how exactly the interest remains around that whole topic among the Condominium Developers Association and the members of it. What do you reckon? What do you think about sustainable development and how important it is for us to strike that balance between going green and also having the city progress?
I think it's very important. There are a lot of cities which have had uncontrolled developments. I don't want to mention, but if you go into Karachi, you will find number of high-rise buildings all over you, and it's basically a concrete jungle. So I think we are lucky in Sri Lanka at the moment, and even in Colombo, where we have a lot of green spaces, open areas, as well as, I would say, even in the area of retailing, you find a lot of high street retailing without too many concrete large structures. I think that gives a lot of character to a place as well. So whilst mentioning that it's important that our development takes place in a planned manner, I think we need a lot of zoning, we need a lot of regulations as far as what can be built in what plots of land. In technical terms, we talk about plot coverages, what type of lands we can go high-rise or low-rise developments. So it's essential to have that, you know. We should not allow development to take place in an uncontrolled manner, where you will find buildings coming up all over. I think you will appreciate having balancing development with a lot of public spaces. Beautiful green public spaces as well is a very, very important component. And that's one area that has been considered a lot in the new development plans being introduced by the government. Even in the Megapolis Act that is proposed to be implemented, there is a lot of consideration for sustainability, a lot of considerations for what type of building regulations will be introduced in the future, and we basically encourage it to have a planned development to take place.
Well, Colombo in 2020, what does the future hold for the Condominium Developers Association, and how do you picture Colombo to be in the year 2020 or beyond?
2020 is not too far away, and I'm sure the city skylight will change quite a lot, because at the moment itself there is a number of developments taking place in Colombo itself, especially in the central business district as well as the secondary business district. Over 6,000 to 7,000 premium condominiums are being planned and under construction in Colombo. There are 4 or 5 shopping malls under construction in Colombo, under planning and construction. There are a number of new office towers as well as a number of new very luxurious hotels under construction at this current moment itself. So taking all that into consideration, you will find the skylines changing in Colombo. And one very important area is, I should imagine the transportation plans of Colombo. All these developments will be nice, but if they don't have proper connectivity, proper road networks, and it was encouraging to note the mentioning of the light rail transport system plan for Colombo. Of course, these will take time and may take another 10 years for everything which is planned to be introduced. but that will give the amount of connectivity and transport flexibility to accommodate this type of developments in Colombo.
Well, the working middle class, they seem to be out of the vertical spectrum. Luxury apartments are coming up, but there's always that discouragement for the working middle class. And has there been any plans, even during your brainstorming sessions at the Condominium Developers Association's meetings, to really give an opportunity for the working middle class to get into the whole spectrum and to enjoy the benefits of the Colombo, of the city's progress?
I think that's a very important area, and I would say there is more demand and opportunity for the lower middle and middle income segments, providing housing for them. I think that's a very important and critical area, because the bulk of our demand is from that segment. So it's not only for the middle income working population, it's even for low income housing. It's extremely important to develop the housing and residential apartments for the middle as well as the low income segments. And there are a number of plans for that. The government is encouraging that in partnership with the private sector as well, to provide affordable housing to the low income categories, and that will be in Colombo and the peripheral areas of Colombo. So that's important, and there are plans, and I hope there is more and more supply that comes in that area, because as opposed to the luxury segment, that is an equally or even more important area to focus on. And we have been giving, from the Condominium Association of Sri Lanka, constructive representations on that area, and number of our members itself is involved in the development of the mid-level housing, and I must say they are doing extremely well as well, and that's the area which should develop.
Well, that was an insightful conversation. Thank you very much for joining us on Biz1st in Focus. Thank you very much for joining us. Remember, you can stay tuned next week as well. We'll be bringing in a new guest. And in the meantime, you can log on to our website, www.newsfirst.lk, to find out what's happening around you. Good night.